How you doing? Feels
I'm
weird
all
on this
right.
little green chair. I feel like I'm on the naughty seat.
Do you want to swap?
Yeah, I'm all right.
You chose it.
I know.
You chose that seat.
Yeah, I did.
What episode is this? 4 or 5?
Might be 5, I
I
think.
think it's 5, isn't it?
Yeah, because masks was
Yeah.
last, and this is boundaries.
Mm. Welcome, Will.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
absolutely.
Uh,
A very special
we have a
guest.
guest today, and I suppose we're just going to talk about boundaries.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
I don't know, where do you normally start?
Well, we start with this. Look how close we all are, because the room is
I
so
know.
like tight and
Yeah.
narrow.
But I like when when you're not that edge. I love being right up close to people. I like the squaminess of it. So maybe for you, your boundaries might be a bit.
I'm all right, close together.
Yeah, I'm all right.
What are you like for like?
Yeah,
closeness?
fine. I was
Yeah.
wondering how it was gonna be
Yeah.
because it's not the biggest room.
No,
Yeah.
no. We probably, hopefully as this podcast grows, probably need to get our own studio, don't we?
Yeah, we'll do that. You can come
And then
again. Will.
come back when it
Oh, wow.
look like
Yeah.
Joe Rogan's or something like
Yeah,
that. Maybe.
sounds good. I always think when you're starting with boundaries, not that we need to get too serious. What are the boundaries of today? So you're our guest. Where's your
Yeah.
edges? And I know you.
I don't really have many.
I'm just going to
Don't have many edges. Like,
Yeah.
And we've literally just met.
yeah. Well, it's a bit weird though because I've seen you,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
virtually.
yeah.
I've seen you,
Mm.
and I've watched now 4 hours
Mm.
of you.
Yeah.
And you won't have seen me
No.
at all.
Mm.
So I feel like maybe I've got a bit more comfortability, maybe
Yeah.
with like you.
Yeah.
'Cause I've
you'll
seen
Yeah,
you.
you'll know how I sound.
Yes.
You'll know how I look.
Yeah.
It's been stalking you.
Yeah.
That's why he's come to see me for the boundaries. No, in supervision, I was like, "This is Alan," just so you knew.
Mm.
I just wanted to,
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
like. It's just nice, isn't it, to get put an image to somebody.
It is I suppose it's a big subject, isn't it? Boundaries. And it's, as you would, before you came in, Will, we were talking about this room being a boundary, and then we went off on one. But then, as you were talking about one of your boundaries, in my head, as a therapist, because I work from home,
Yeah.
so I have to closely boundary stuff. Because if you think of, I have my garage, external garage, is converted into an office. And then, I've been doing that for, how many years have I been doing it? 2.5 years now. And if you look at an office like this, which is just office block, then there's already a boundary there, isn't there, with clients and stuff. But when you're working from home, it's like, ooh, when I first started, I thought, how do you set boundaries in your own home when you're seeing people who you don't know? And you have to have boundaries.
How did you do that?
Well, weirdly, I was like, because it's the garage and it's converted, I thought, well, there's one boundary. It's not the house.
Yeah.
The thing that weirdly not disturbed me but unsettled me when I was first doing it was toilet access. So and not many people use the toilet, but when they do, I can't go, well, you can't use my toilet. Is then people were going into my house.
Do you have a garden?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
So they would come
I'm
round
in the garden.
dig a hole. So then, and it doesn't bother me now. It's entirely, the boundary is almost merged into a new boundary. But as I was beginning it, it was like, how do I sit with these feelings? Because there's a physical boundary with it being an external room.
Yeah.
But when they're coming into my house, it's like, oh, sometimes they've seen my kids. They're coming in through the kitchen, have to go upstairs and to the toilet. So they've saw more of me than I have of them. Does that make sense? As they've saw me toothbrush.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They've saw towels.
Well, they could be touching things, couldn't they?
I assume they'd have to.
Because you know the ADHD in me.
Oh, do you mean the touch things they shouldn't be touching?
Yeah, like that sense.
Yeah. So they've when I reflected on it, I was like, oh, this is an interesting boundary. And over time, it's gradually subsided because now in my head, the sense I make of it is, because I was looking at kind of renting an office to create that external boundary even further. But then I thought, no, I think, well, if I'm comfortable with this boundary, and I've now sat in the boundary of, as in, clients are in the, but they've got access to. There's this new version that's of this boundary come out where it's like, well, they're seeing more of you, and but you're still boundary in it. As in, they're seeing me as a human, not just as a therapist, but there's still a firm boundary in place. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense, yeah.
So it's like, it is I think the more you sit with things,
It's a sitting with, isn't it?
it is, because I suppose when I first started in private practice, I was like, oh God, now I'm going to have to rent a place. But I thought, no, just sit with this. Just what is these emotions? And it was probably like 15 years of working in the NHS and then exploring that from that. I thought, why am I feeling this way towards human beings? As in, oh, there needs to be a firm boundary here and they're going to all go and kill me and blah, blah, blah. When you work in the NHS for 15 years in secondary services, there's a weird dynamic between clinician and patient. And having people at home challenge that, and now it's melted away, as in it's a human and a human coming together.
What was it before? What was the dynamic?
Oh, the
before?
dynamic was a power dynamic.
Right, yeah.
As in, I'm the professional and you're the patient, particularly with psychosis. It's like, that is, I suppose, from that angle, then people are coming to you because of this expertise that you have. So then they weirdly push you into that role, don't they? Of, we're getting into roles now, but I suppose there's a boundary in it. Is once that was inquired into, as in, why am I feeling this? And then that NHS role started to melt away. It's like, people come to my house because you're a human, I'm a human. I've got a set of skills that you want. Let's just sit down and learn together.
Are you even like aware of that boundary now? Like, does it ever come into your mind of like, oh, this person's coming to my house, are they going to be okay? Or is it just, this is where I do what I do? This is just the place where I do it?
And I suppose what it is for me now that the NHS boundary or roles melted away, it's I just now see myself as any other therapist, physiotherapist that work from home, or a chiropractor that works from home,
normal, isn't it?
or a Reiki practitioner that works from home. But how many shitloads of therapists work from home in different domains? It's like, what makes a psychotherapist different to a physiotherapist? I go and see an osteopath, and he has his own in his home, and
you can almost hear, can't you, the voices of others who are new to it, or is training it, or training organisations, instilling it in a certain way. I get why, because there's some people who can't, maybe not able to hold spaces like we can. Because I've been to your house, haven't I? You've been to mine.
I have.
So he brought us a Christmas present, and I went, Christmas present? Can I come to your house? And he had a nervous breakdown. And him and his wife, it's just the most boundaried people, rocked up, and I lived in quite a rough area then. And you were more concerned about the area.
I was,
not the house. And I was like, you're making it weird. They brought you a gift. I'm exchanging a gift to them because I've known you such a long time. And that again was like another, because I've tried it with a colleague, and the person was sat in my living room, and I've known them for a long time, and I went, I can't do it. I can't do the supervision. And they were a friend. So it was a really strange dynamic to then think, well, I couldn't bring a client or a new supervisor into this space. So I can't do that. Even though I've had counselling and been to someone's house in Ingleby Barwick and saw like photographs and things, I could sort of like separate it a little bit. But how are you when you've been to mine and then I've been to yours? What did that feel like, Will? Because I've been your therapist, now I'm your supervisor, aren't I?
I don't want to, like, it just felt very normal. It didn't, I think, like, we, and you guys have sort of spoken about this before, and I've talked about this with other people. I find that things are weird if you make them weird, but you're not always, that's not always a conscious thing of like making something weird. You can unconsciously make something weird, but I find it, as long as you're acknowledging what's going on As long as you're present with like me coming to your house, like just being like we're not in therapy. We weren't in therapy time. No. I was just coming to see you as a human being. And I could make it weird. Like I could have made it weird, but because I feel like we acknowledged what the boundaries were, like we didn't have to speak them. It's like today, like no one. You messaged me being like, "See you at 10." You didn't have to say, "Well, if I don't see you at 10 and you're an hour late, then we can't do it." You know what I mean? You don't have to add all the extra bit on because we just know.
It's unspoken, isn't it?
It's unspoken. So when I came to your house, there's this unspoken thing of like, for me, that just says, "Well, just be normal." Just like
I wasn't being.
I didn't pick up on any of that.
Oh, so I'm in the kitchen because I have to make everything weird. But then, because I have all of these old demons, voices, rules, which you've got to place, they're super healthy.
Oh, yeah.
You mustn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But it's very black and white. And if you look at like the ethical grid, the ethical framework, it's got to have give. As you were talking, them kids' balls that are like made of...
I know what you're talking about.
They
you stretch
expand
them out.
and you fling them. It's like this, isn't it? Boundaries. And sometimes with our work, we've had to go, hang on a sec, let's do this at this particular point. And other times, when you handed that wedding invitation to me, I nearly died.
Yeah.
So I'm sat and Lauren, his wife, stood up and there was like, "Oh, here's an invitation to our wedding, but we don't know whether you should be coming along." And I was like, nearly melted in the chair. And I thought, I'm going to undo all the good work we've done.
Right.
Just very normal, two human beings saying, "Here's an invite." So I took it to my supervisor, Sarah Robinson at the time, she's brilliant at her role, super radical, and said, "Would you go to this person's funeral?" I went, "Of course I would."
Yeah.
And we'll go to the wedding then.
Yeah.
So you're right, we can make it weird, but I think it's from our frame of reference. It's over instilled. It's got a place because I think there's people doing all sorts of, they're getting into relationships or they're marrying clients, or it gets weird, doesn't it? There's, for me, people are still in a place of vulnerability. I was when I was having my therapy.
Yeah.
So I guess it's balancing. You're balancing a lot as the therapist.
Absolutely.
So you can't. I think the weirdness comes from the rules, the ethics, which you're trying to hold a place for. Because I wouldn't go to everyone's wedding.
No.
For some people to have turned down
totally.
And it's not that you're the best client, they're the worst. No. It's just a different set of dynamics.
But it goes both ways, doesn't it? I think, as I was thinking about, because since you introduced the topic of boundaries and said, like, this is what we're going to be talking about, I tried to think about it. I tried to think, like, let's sound smart. Like, let's think about all these different smart things. And I ended up just giving up. But right now, as you're talking, what becomes really apparent to me is, like, they go both ways. Like, me handing that invitation to you, the first thing I think of is, like, well, it's an invitation. You're allowed to decline an invitation. I'm not forcing you to go.
No.
But then I can have a response to you declining it. And if I have, like, an unhealthy response, then it's going to be weird. Like, if I'm like, well, you have to come, then all of a sudden I've completely changed the dynamic and it's no longer an invitation. But as long as I stick to I feel like boundaries work when we stick to the rules of what we're engaging with. Like, an invitation has a boundary, and the boundary is that, like, you're allowed to decline it. Like, if you then decline it and I get uppity about that, well, it's no longer an invitation, and I've completely changed the boundary, and then it becomes weird. So it goes both ways. I have to be like settled in my boundaries. You have to be settled in yours for it to really work.
Yeah.
If that makes any
sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like it's going to the space of vows as well, isn't it? As in, if you think of how boundaries are set within different types of relationships, is if you get married, you say vows, which is weirdly boundaries. Or when you're having an intimate relationship, you're entering into that intimate dialogue with someone where you begin to understand what are the rules and roles of our relationship, and that roles form the boundary, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
But what I've reflected on, and it's probably a pertinent conversation, is if you look at, like, professional boundaries, there's policies, there's contracts, there's written contracts, whether it's therapy or whether it's employer perspective. With marriages, there is. With friendships, there isn't any spoken, what I expect of you and what do you expect of me, and what, does that make sense?
100%.
There's never any boundaries, as in, they're almost like invisible boundaries that everyone tries to navigate, as in, well, what's my boundary with this person? And no one ever really speaks an honest truth, usually, in friendships, as in, you just try and find the way, don't you, with a friendship, compared to more intimate relationships. And it's even the same with family sometimes. You tend not to, what's the boundary here? Because no one's saying, let's shall we have an honest conversation?
Yeah.
It never really happens in friendships.
It doesn't, does it? Very rare.
It tends to happen in workplaces because there's policies and procedures.
Yeah.
So
and you know
really,
the edges, don't you?
You know the edges.
Yeah.
And you do with intimate partners. But other relationships, it's like, ooh, where are these boundaries? These are more subtle. It's like, because no one's really speaking about them to bring them into a concrete form.
Yeah.
Because I suppose speech is concrete, isn't it? It's brought into the material world, and then you can then go, right, this is the rule, which forms the boundary, which only my own personal experiences have never really found that with friendships, as in it's not a spoken thing. I don't know whether that's our culture.
I'm trying to think now, like, I don't think I've ever sat down with my friends and said, this is how we're going to behave. These are the rules of how we're going to interact.
Yeah.
But you know when you cross them, like you know when a boundary has been crossed.
Yeah.
Well, you do anyway, I find. Like if the boundary that's been crossed is your boundary, that becomes like really apparent to you.
Yeah.
But it's not always apparent to them. Because you don't have that dialogue. You don't have that concrete understanding of like, this is where the boundaries are.
How do you know when it's been broken then from your...
I think you feel it.
What do you feel?
I think you feel it. I think there's an element of betrayal. Like there's an element you feel like a bit betrayed because I think it's something you feel like they should have known sometimes, not always, because there's an element of them not knowing. And if you're aware of the not knowing, then the betrayal probably won't be there. But there's certainly an uncomfortability with like, oh, I didn't like that, right? In the same way that like, if I was to like bring a needle today and I was to like you know, prick Alan, you'd like, oh, that I don't like that.
What do you do that for?
Yeah, like there's a sensation that you get when someone crosses a boundary that lets you know that like that's not okay. And you might not have an articulation or a thought or like a concrete realized thought of that feeling, but you know it's there. Like, oh, I did not like that.
I got that when you handed the wedding thing.
Yes,
What it popped, because I sat at the top table, I couldn't believe it. The family, everything was more bounded than how I was presenting. And working with people, I think you can learn your own edges. Therapy helps you know where your edges are, what boundaries are, how to express them more openly if you choose to friends without being a dickhead about it. And like, these are my boundaries and being over the top. But it punctured something. And at first, I was like, I don't like this. I do not like, but there was growth in it. It felt awful. And I was like, rip it up, hand it back, make it weird, put it back on you, project it. This is you're very unboundaried. You shouldn't be doing this. You were stood up when you handed me it. And I was in a position of lower power because I was sat down. Loads of crap came up. Then
I wasn't even aware of all that.
So I had to sit with all of this stuff. But at the wedding, something transitioned me away from the NHS, which isn't bad. Which you can't breathe, you can't function in it. Because I work radically the same as I've worked with you as I did in the NHS. And it used to raise a few eyebrows, but I managed every boundary from giving people my business number, my mobile number, text everyone on the morning like I do with you guys to say, you know, don't forget your appointment and things. Only one person ever pushed through that, and I quickly pushed it back into place again. But going back to the wedding, what it did for me, it pushed me out of all that. There was learning. And Evie pulled up to pick me up, my daughter. She went, how was it? And I went, not only was the wedding amazing, but I feel like I've outgrown something. I can see things much more clearly. And I did a lecture to 40 students at Teesside Uni and just dropped this into conversation. And there's a deep context to this, isn't there?
Yeah, of course.
There's hours and hours of work that we've done together, both in therapy and supervision. That has radically shifted my perspective. What's really aligned with me is Jeremy Holmes wrote a book about exploring security. And you, as a person, it aligns to everything that we've done. Meet the person where they are, then move to where they need to be. Because the relationship's radically shifted now. I supervise you both, so there's that relationship dynamic. I want to be friendly, but sometimes we've had a conversation about it, haven't we? I want to be your mate, but I can't, but because I'm just holding this next bit of space.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on in those. And I think for me, it's being boundaried with my own boundaries, but being boundless as well. Doing the mindfulness piece, sitting in meditation, holding space for all of it. Because
sounds hard work.
If you make it hard work, I think. If you just sit with what's there, because this is the next bit of learning. I think there's going to be a radical cultural shift in the way we're doing things. The downside to that is professionally immature people who are just learning it, and it's nothing to do with intelligence, can sometimes do things that I have to say in supervision, don't do that. You know, they're going to people's homes, or not my supervisees. I just mean more generalised, doing things, going to parties, and I'm like, you are blurring things without there being a very fixed premise about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And these boundaries are unique to every individual relationship. Sometimes I have to suffocate the relationship with them, because if I didn't, I'd hemorrhage out. Others, I'm like, this can have a bit of flexibility. There's a bit of give. Causes your issues. But I think it's not a one style fits all approach. It's taught that way, and I understand why. So that when we're delivering it, we know to be
that's the
creative.
Foundation of boundary, isn't it? If you didn't have the foundation of boundaries, as in the concrete rigidity of them, then you then can't allow it to be more subtle over time, can you? It has to start with a very concrete version, doesn't it? That's why it's taught that way. If you were to teach students, let's be boundless in our boundaries, and then they were like, oh, this is very abstract. Does that mean I can have sex with clients? Then it would just open something up.
People
which
do.
is
Because of my career, people have because there's a vulnerability in you coming and saying, "Oh, I have no boundaries," but there's still, from what we've done, you're being vulnerable.
Yeah,
you might not feel it, so I have to be very boundaried with that. Last night, my mates out the back, and they're just brilliant. They'd invited us to a party. I was like, "Well, I want to go," and if you was cancelled, I'd have gone. I was like, "But you've committed to this," and it wasn't their boundaries; it was mine. I was becoming boundless.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go there. I want to drink Kylie wine because it got us a bottle. Come round, and I would have had a scream. It's such a laugh. And I was like, but I really want to be, and I could see the garden, and I supervise one of the people as well, but we manage it all, and it functions and it works brilliant well because we're adults. But I wanted to be in that party and do this. So it wasn't that, and they sent a few messages, come on. And it wasn't them being unbounded, it was me giving missed signals because they could pick up on that. So what I like to do with my own boundaries is meditate and sit with it, and you can't be there and do this. Imagine being hungover today because I wanted a party, and this had been in my diary for ages. So it's also your own as the therapist. It's not always the client. We can give missed signals, give miscommunication into what's expected, because they're constantly evolving, aren't they? They're constantly changing, and I think that's why we can't do them with friends, as you say, or family members. Sometimes I don't know when I've stepped on my daughter's boundaries till you get. Don't do that. Like if I'm being mucky, or saying something a bit rude, big 1970s, a bit rude.
Just being an annoying dad.
That's the edge. So you don't know you've stepped in, but I think this is more. It's more transparent sometimes in a session because you're deeply attuned. Not that I'm not attuned to family, but it's just a different.
It's a different space, isn't it? I suppose spaces like this room and therapy rooms and more spoken places where you go, right, we're entering into a space of honesty which has boundaries and respect and blah blah blah. Even if it's like, when you go to a training session and then they get the whiteboard out and go, right, let's ground rules, like it's already spoken, it's there. Where I suppose in friendships and out in the bigger wider world, there's boundaries everywhere, isn't there? And it's almost navigating them boundaries as even if you're in a supermarket. You're navigating the boundary of like your own personal space as you're walking through the aisle. If someone's coming a bit close, and you think, "Oh, well, you're a bit close." So then, but they might not think that. They might think that's just a normal kind of space to have between two adults or two people.
Yeah, I think that's
constant navigation and constant adjustment, isn't it? To so many different boundaries.
Do you think that's part of making friends? Like, if you were to remove that, if you were to remove the element of making friends where we didn't have to find out our boundaries, they were just like there's a big queue, like when you're at school, do you like these things, you line up in your queues, you're friends with these people. Do you think that would change the way friendships are?
Possibly.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like as you're talking then, Alan, it sort of made me realize that like part of friendships and why you're able to develop deep, meaningful friendships is because you explore that together. It's not all of a sudden spoken and the rules straight away. Like, the exploration of your boundaries is where you become friends. And without that, like, it feels like it would change. It would like be something else. Like, it would be more like formal. It would be more like an employer-employee co-worker relationship. Whereas again, because I'm thinking of my own friendships now, where they've deepened, where they've gotten more strong, where they've got more stronger, where they've gotten stronger, comes from that like place of, well, you've done this, I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
Like, can I talk to you about it? Like, because there's another boundary. Will you let me talk to you about it? And then if you do, oh wow, like now we can have a real conversation about these boundaries. But it's come up like naturally. It's not been like, right, like I think we're going to be friends. Let's like sign the contract. Because that just feels like,
imagine.
Well, it's
that would
probably
push me away.
autistic, isn't it? It's probably an autistic kind of trait, is to do that rigidity of contracts in more, because friendships are subtle, aren't they? They're very subtle relationships compared to professional relationships.
Yeah.
Where you do have to, you're right, you do have to navigate it as it's happening in real time.
Yeah.
Rather than having the written rules, the written policies of more of a professional relationship. Is you're doing it on the fly. You're literally learning in real time, aren't you?
Yeah.
And then having to, it's almost, if you see a friendship, it's just a tightrope.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's just right. Oh shit. Oh fuck.
Yeah.
Oh. And I'll adjust there, and I'll adjust there, and I'll adjust here, and you're just walking it together. If they're down the other end and you're meeting in the middle, it's like, whoa, hang on a minute, you stop, because I need to readjust. And then it's that scenario, isn't it? Of just constant adjustment.
Yeah.
Do you think you can do that? Better being younger.
What do you mean?
Because I don't know whether we were taught it. Not that I want to make it an age thing. I'm a bit older.
I wasn't taught. I think maybe, I suppose, I do remember my mum having conversations about always being honest. Is if you've got any conflict with someone, and I think that's maybe a Northeast brutality thing more than anything else, because she was brutally honest with people.
Right. Okay.
Which was a learning point as a child, as in, oh, this is what you do.
Right, yeah.
And I've learned to attune that, or learned to kind of tone it down and be honest, but not too honest. I don't know whether that's like, I mean, how old are you?
29, I'm 30
right.
this year.
So there's so I don't know whether that is like a cultural, generational thing, as where, because I notice people who are in the 30s, they are more open than our than previous millennials and
Gen Z. Jeez,
I don't even know what they all mean. I don't know what like.
So it's about at 8, 9, 10. I don't know what the age gap is, and then there's Alpha now, isn't there? If they're born now, so right? Generation Alpha, then Gen Z. They just really say, if you have them in therapy, why are you doing that? Why are you wearing them clothes? I knew a bit old for them.
Yeah,
it's just it's honesty, but it's like it's come back full circle to our mother's honesty, but with a lot more compassion. Not that your mum wasn't compassionate,
but she had a Northeastern
my mum's the same
brutal honesty, which can be cutting.
Right,
but that's got a place in the boundary bit. Like from what we've done, I won't go into it, but I had to use that very cutting sharp for something that was appearing in the sessions. Like, I can't have that going on.
Yeah.
So I had to be my mother, and I went, I'm not working with that.
Yeah.
And like,
and sometimes that's needed, isn't it?
It was vile, wasn't it? The way that I had to come in. Well, sometimes you might not have felt it.
No.
But sometimes there's the boundary where we have to slice things, don't we? We have to be harsher. There's also your work with young people, Will, and I'm wondering if that the younger generation, what you're noticing, and being younger yourself, about how boundaries might be spoken more in friendships now. They weren't in our generation. It was weird. It was like, don't do therapy. It's like it was done more like you were doing pseudo therapy or oversigning contracts, or not that you would formally do a contract. I don't mean that, but to say all that stuff, people are like, oh, just drink your beer and stop being bizarre. So I'm wondering what happens in your practice working with young people and how you're finding it with the boundaries.
It doesn't come up in it never really comes up in a bad way. You know what I mean? I don't find myself having to do a lot of managing of the boundaries. I think, because I'm working in an organization, there's layered boundaries, because I'm not like private, because I'm working in an organization. They already understand the boundaries of where we are, and then there's like another layer of that boundary of what we're doing where we are. So there's sometimes the boundaries are like really clear. They're already really clearly defined because they're already coming to like, because I'm doing my placement in education. So they already have the boundary framework of education.
Yeah.
And then when they come and see me, like that doesn't go, right? They still have that, okay, I'm at college and, you know, I'm wherever. This is how I behave when I'm here. So I don't get a lot of boundary violations, let's say, in the work that I do. It's very rare. The biggest one I probably get is like, because it's time limited, the biggest one I probably get is people wanting more. That doesn't feel like that just sort of feels like you've had something that you like and someone's saying it's coming to an end. You're just like, oh, like, can I have any more? Like, you know, like not like an Oliver Twist way, but like in a like just in a normal.
It would be really funny if it was.
Yeah.
More. Yeah. I suppose like working in, I mean, I do some work in education as well with kids and teachers. And what I've found is sometimes I'll see kids at my own private practice, but also do some work in schools. And now having that comparison between a more open, my office is more of an open boundary. It's boundaries, but it's open. And the person that comes in, particularly when I'm working with kids, is they're coming in as a child.
Right.
But when I'm working, and I've noticed now this comparison, is that when I'm working in the school, that child is coming in as a student.
Yes. Yeah.
So then when they're a student in the student environment, then it's very hard to get openness into the room.
Yeah.
Because the boundary itself, schools are very rigid places, and they have to be. Particularly secondary schools, are almost like crowd control places, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is sometimes it's like, do children, when you're doing that type of work in schools, is it, and this is just a question that I've been kind of reflecting on, as in, is it really therapy? Because it's not an open, it doesn't, the space itself, the physical space, but also the rules and the roles that are required from that child. You know what kids are like, they'll just adapt to a situation. Is then, does it allow for that child to be fully open to be themselves, to work through what they need to work through, because there's the student role?
I think it's a really good question. What I've noticed is some do and some don't. Like some will really like slot into they'll stay in the student role.
Yeah.
And I have to do a lot of, or I feel like when that happens, I have to do a lot of reframing, because they sort of view me as a teacher.
Yeah.
Like I'm not like, I'm
I
not
used
a
to get called
teacher.
sir all
Yes.
the time.
Yeah. And we have to reframe that so that we can actually do some work. Some of them though, and this is maybe the awareness of like therapy and mental health and everything else is increasing. Some of them do come in and just like, we don't need to do any of that. Like straight away, they know what they're here for. They know what it's about. They have some understanding of it from social media, from wherever they've got the knowledge from, and they strip away those layers themselves.
Yeah.
But I do find there is the odd time where the student stays a student, and we do have to do a bit of work on like,
it's a physical environment, isn't it? That's just such a rigid boundary. Is then kids being kids. You know, if you get a 15-year-old boy who is calling you sir and calling you sir and calling you sir, it's like he's still not out of this role.
Yeah.
And it's like takes so long to.
And something I've found I have to be really, really aware of doing work in an education setting is you only have an hour with them, and once that hour's up, they're going back into that setting.
Yeah.
Like, so I find a lot of the time I do a lot of work at the end to make sure they're all right. Because if we've done something where we've done a bit of work that's like been really intense, and you know they've been upset or whatever's happened, I want to make sure that they're okay going back out there, because it's not as if like when I had my own personal therapy with you, Rob, like I didn't go and like, you know, I got to go home, or you know, if I did have something else planned, there's like a drive, there's a time frame where I can like decompress. Whereas in an education, they're going straight back out into it. It's straight back out into like seeing their friends. They might be going straight back into class, and they don't have time to like readjust back in. So I find myself doing a lot of that, like, okay, like if we've come out of being a student, like let's get back into being a student. Like, so you're safe going back in, like, I call it the jungle, because like that's what it feels like sometimes.
Because it is.
Yeah, like, so that you're safe going back into the jungle, because like if you're vulnerable going out there, like that's not going to be safe. People are going to, like, because a lot of the time I find with, I don't know if you find this as well, I don't know if you find this with like young people, is they don't want to be seen being vulnerable. Like that's like bad for them. So if we're like, okay, your hour's up, like, thanks for coming, see you later, shoot them off, and they go into this space where it's vulnerable, that's like really jarring, and it almost like makes all the work you've done invalid.
They're going to be targeted. I think when you're working with people, the boundaries, your own boundaries, their boundaries, and where you meet together. Because when I've done your vulnerability work, I'll subtly close, and you sense, don't you? That's only going to take me a minute, and what you're doing next, and what you're getting up to. And you've got
as we're coming towards the end.
Yeah, you know all my catchphrases, don't you? And you say them before I say them. I'm trying to get some new ones, seriously. But then you've got half an hour drive for your nervous system to decompress, because you're getting back into your executive functioning, driving the car, doing all of that. But I remember coming out of my sessions sometimes, and the vulnerability that was there, that was unboundaried. What I've noticed with working with children and young people, and I supervise like schools in mind, the Middlesbrough project, because you're right about that, they're holding a different environmental space, the boundaries that they have to hold. And there's one person who says, I have to go into this room and then I have to record for uni going, it's not really a great room, and it's holding more space than what other people professionally have to do. So then when you are dropping people into vulnerability, there's a boundary there, isn't there? Exactly what you mentioned, how you take that back. But then there's also our own as the therapist, because I think a lot of the time people might say to me, oh, you don't seem to have any boundaries. And I was like, because you're not physically aware of them, I'm not speaking about them all the time. But my own boundaries about being boundless or about being too boundaried, I'm trying to work with those as a mindfulness teacher, a meditation teacher, because fundamentally that's what the podcast is about, sitting with, isn't it? And sometimes I'm sitting with, like, I'm being too wide open here. I haven't closed the person down enough. I'm trying to be too cool, too chill, or they've not liked to be sealed back into a certain space. So we're holding a lot with our own stuff. That sometimes is a reflection from others to judge us being in a certain way. They don't always see the nuances in a space. People often presume on the outside, oh, Rob does this or does that, and I'm actually very much for, but I'm one of the most boundaried therapists in a space when I'm working with someone, because otherwise you can't do the work. So I'm following the order, the rules. It's like a Bible, isn't it? Without being religious about it. But then where the flexibility is, where the give is, especially what you're saying with the vulnerability piece, and young people need more adaptation. But at the same time, we have to hold that bigger boundary, because you're not reparenting as such, but there's a lot of things that I didn't get in my own childhood. So what, it just is what it is. That you're trying to give the young person as well, and you're trying to educate a school, a system that's totally radically different to the work that we are doing. So all of these spaces, these flexibilities, talking about it, I think that's what's super useful in supervision, as you've transitioned now into supervision. And that boundary there was another one. Right, I've done my therapy work. I want to be a therapist. I want you to make an incredible one. But how do I sit? I was like, do I move you onto someone else? And you were like, I don't want to do that. So I'm sitting again with my supervisor, who's, I know what the answer's going to be, incredibly radical. I've since got others. My mindfulness supervisor for a long time, Barbara the Calder, she was brilliant. She wasn't a therapist, and I loved it, because the boundaries for her were more about learning. She was a PhD supervisor, incredible lady. She's like, how are you going to get the person back to learning? So when I'm sitting about, how do I get back to learning? What am I missing from the boundaries? Or I need to go and read again and get back to the research. How am I going to help the young person get back to their learning? So all the time she said, forget about therapy. It's how you get back to that learning, teaching point, which has helped me radically more than some of the therapy stuff. Very boundaried person. We worked in a very boundaried, structured way, which helped me all the time getting back to learning. What bits have I missed from the boundary piece? What bits do I need to go and reread? Because we've been through a radical transition, haven't we? And then it's forming into something else. We've done the friendship bit now, and I'm like, oh, this is all new. Because you were incredibly together, but I have my own stuff going on as a therapist as well. that might spoil all of that work that we've done. And I don't want to do that. In that work, we've spent hours and hours sitting in this room and another room upstairs. But I'm thinking this stuff that surfaces up could spoil all of that. Because then people get in my ears again. You're doing more. But really, it's because they want to do, but they don't quite know.
Yeah.
How do you help others?
It's like that ripple effect on it. It's like rain, isn't it? Kind of dropping on a lake, and then you got these circular ripples. Then the ripples are almost like the boundary of the water for a little while, and then that boundary then just disperses back into the water, and then another situation creates another boundary in the water, and that's just life, isn't it? As in, there's boundaries constantly happening every single moment.
How can we help others then who are maybe newer to it, or have just got a radically different opinion?
I think you're already doing it.
Do you think they're doing it?
I think you're already doing it and helping the others. I think part of it comes from modelling, obviously, and you're modelling how to be boundaried. And then I find as well, they've got to want to learn. They've got to want to see oh, I like that. How can I do that? And then they've got to let themselves be taught. Because I think there's a lot of people. I find you have something that's good and you want to share it, don't you? Part of you is wow, I want other people to experience this. And then you go out and try and share it and they're like, oh, yeah, but I don't want that. They're being boundary. And then we're not being boundary because right, let's help you. Let's do this really cool thing. Yeah, but I don't.
Yeah, it's the preacher complex, isn't it? As in well, I've found this very helpful, so I'm not going to preach it to everyone else. And everyone else is like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. And I find just model it. I think that's the best thing.
Yeah.
Just model your boundaries.
Yeah, just being it, isn't it? Being the boundary rather than trying to project or reflect the boundary out. Yeah. It's I suppose, boundaries are so many, with it having so many layers. And if I was listening to this as a lay person, this is quite a subtle conversation. If we look at how say a child coming into the world learns boundaries through the physical boundaries first, don't they? Because they're getting used to the body first. They're learning that, oh, this is my hand, and then there's a physical boundary kind of occurring. Where do you think this conversation lies? Because there's physical boundaries taking place, as in because of how we've placed the chairs and blah blah blah. But if people were listening, what do you think the questions would be? As in, are we talking about physical boundaries, subtle boundaries, or even subtler boundaries? Because they're all kind of interdispersed with one another, aren't they? As in, if someone wanted to take away something from this discussion, what do you think they'd be taken away?
Some things they might already know. There might be lay people might already know this. They're doing it on, without second guessing all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's for people who are more into therapy or mindfulness. It's your spiritual, it's your cultural, your sexual, your metaphysical boundaries. I have a lot of clients who discuss queer things, and it's almost bordering on homophobic, and there's humour in it. And I'm unboundaried with that. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly, rattled by that. So I think it's knowing your own personal boundaries, isn't it? Sitting with them if you're meditating on them, or being more closely aligned to them. And then also about not being like an echo chamber, that we have to still listen to the gurus who are cascading things down. No, we work like this is how we train, especially in counselling. I think therapy is subtly different, not massively. But I know locally the way counselling's taught is you sit with a certain framework, you do a certain thing. I think people will take what they want. There'll be boundaries to this, from switching off to pausing to making sense of it, from it getting too intellectual. But I think there's a boundary coach on TikTok, and I love all of it. Sometimes it's about a statement, radically putting out into the world, this is where the edge of me lies.
Yeah.
Because I know all our edges are all intermingled, and I want this wall to be a bit bigger so I can sit back a little bit. And
thinking about boundaries from a more abstract perspective is listening to a book at the moment, Dreams of Light it's called. Have you heard of Andrew Holacek?
I have not.
I'll lend you his book. It's cool.
Yeah. So this is the next book to Dream Yoga, and it talks about inquiring into quantum science to clarify that there is boundaries, because there is in the relative world. I'm going kind of really abstract at the end, but then how quantum science is currently becoming a spiritual practice in itself, because of how it's inquiring into a reality, is that everything is boundless, but it appears to be boundaried. Makes sense?
A little bit.
So if you imagine, and how he describes it in the book, particularly these quantum physicists are now, they all sound quite spiritual in the way they're describing things, as in everything's an illusion, even as the boundaries of the physical body. So there isn't anything here. It appears to be on this level. And there is things such as sub-neutrons, or something like that, which is 50 billion times smaller than an atom.
Wow.
And he says, if you hold your hand up, and it's obviously been discovered through science, is that these sub-neutrons are so I appear solid and I can feel myself being solid, but sub-neutrons are actually passing through your body every single moment, which would suggest that we're not solid. So then, and as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, are we just a mesh? So certain things can go through the mesh, as in light can pass through the mesh, and really tiny, tiny quantum particles can pass through the mesh. But as you move further up into the more physical boundaried place like this, then that chair can't pass through me. But the sub-neutrons in that chair, if I was to sit on the chairs, then passing through my body. So then it's like the conversation that we've had about boundaries on many different levels is, if you were to sit with the boundless, as in it's all an illusion, and I don't mean that in just like a philosophical way, as in if you think it from that everything's just light, then once you get back into this relative physical world, then you're sitting with both at the same time. You're sitting with the boundless, but you're also sitting with the boundaried simultaneously. So then if you're working more subtly with someone through the emotional world, you then, this is where it goes back to the friendship stuff, doesn't it, that we talked about earlier, as in, is there contracts already being played out in the subtle emotional world that were just the physical body's just not aware of or not tapped into as much? I know this sounds really abstract.
No, I got what what I'm hearing is like there's layers to boundaries. The more you come up through those layers, the more obvious they are.
Yeah. But that you go further down.
Yeah. The more subtle they become, but that doesn't mean they're not there. That doesn't mean they're not happening, right? Like I can't feel these. What were they called?
Sub-neutrons.
I can't feel the sub-neutrons going through me. Doesn't mean they're not there. Doesn't mean it's not happening. Just because I can't feel it. And if we were to observe it, then we can see it is actually occurring. And there's some learning in that. You can learn something from okay, this is a process that's occurring. I'm not sure what I was talking about there.
No, I think I suppose
metaphysical.
It's metaphysical. As soon as you said metaphysical, that popped into my head, as in, we work on generally speaking, most people will be working on the physical realm, the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual, the cognitive, the interrelational, all that type of stuff. But the metaphysicals is the glue that's holding it all together, isn't it? And and once you tap into that space, it's then so that part of the metaphysicals pulling and making me feel. If this entire room was just a mesh, then if we were to pull something over in the corner there, then we would know that it would pull us, because we're the mesh too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We're just a more denser form of the mesh. Does that make sense?
So in your boundaries, what I've had to do today is to sit. There's a meditation where it's like a violet flame, and it's just really straightforward. You don't have to make it woo-woo. You sit, it's in your belly. You allow it to seal you metaphysically without making it all weird. So that when I'm doing this work, stuff will still get in. But there's a guy on YouTube called Steve Noble. I don't know whether I've sent you his link. And he works with a lot of therapists and healers. Then he clears the nervous system. Sometimes I have to do that because there's a pull in therapy. There's a pull in my friendships to the boundary's not always verbal. It's not always contractual. It's not always spiritual. It's not always, physical. Sometimes there's other things going on that we are just starting to learn about. They can get complicated, aren't there? As you read some of the stuff, you're like, what on earth's all this? But that isn't there that thing where there's an atom can be in two places at the same time as it's fired from a
the double slit experiment.
So if I'm doing that and I've got the boundary, the unboundaried, and everything else in between, I'm working with just subtle shifts in my practice. That after a session, I might have to clear something out or clear something out of my nervous system. The metaphysical's in that person going back into the jungle because they'll be wide open and they'll get attacked. And if you look at animals, chimpanzees, they'll attack others, so the serotonin drops. So then they're more likely to be bullied. All of that's going on the metaphysical level. I'm still just getting to grips with the concept because it's quite a different perspective.
It's a mind-blowing concept, isn't it, to tap into the metaphysical world. I was reading a piece of research, I don't know how true it is. I know I'm going off on subject, but it's probably not off subject. Russian scientists have, and I was reading the art, do you know when you start to think, is this true? Russian scientists have mapped the brain and the body and almost like the best way to describe it is they've mapped the GPS in the energy in the body. So as in basically the soul, as in, so they've attached physical stuff, as in computers and stuff, to someone's brain, and then that's then scanned the body, mapped the energy, almost like a GPS, an individual unique GPS code of each person. They've done it with a dead person, as in she was dying, then she died. So then they had her energy GPS code. And then, as far as we know in our known universe, they located her energy GPS code in another galaxy, something like 40 billion light years away, instantly as she died. Then it reappeared somewhere else. And they were like, we don't know what's going on.
Have you seen Years and Years on Netflix?
No.
Oh, it's on this premise. It's on the political thing that we're in right now. I think I'm saying things because I don't know enough about it. About how the world's going to be a Handmaid's Tale and stuff. And they've started they're downloading humans into the system.
Yeah.
I know that's not real,
but it's you look at Back to the Future. That's look at how many ideas have now come from Back to the Future, and that's just a sci-fi idea perspective.
Where's our energy as we're?
What were we going to say there? As we're?
What do I say?
As we're moving towards the end.
I'm even doing it in here. It's like, why are you doing that? I'm like, I don't know.
I do it as well.
Moving more towards the end. And I've seen it on something. I'm like,
but it's a boundary, isn't it? You're just letting them know we're approaching a boundary. Rather than just being like, right, we're finished.
Like, bad.
See you later. We're just like, the boundary's coming up. Like when you're in your car and like it starts beeping as you get closer to something. Your car's just letting you know,
the little
like
flag. Oh, I'm nearly there.
Yeah.
Can you feel your energy shifting? Because as we talk, mine's gone like, gone back into my body. I can feel like a shift there.
I tend to not get sad, but I tend to go,
oh, you're clinging.
Yeah, because I like conversations like this. They're quite rich conversations, aren't they?
But we can still talk. Do you know in mindfulness, have we done it well where you reject the present moment, you cling to it, or you just meh? Where are you at right now? I'm probably not met in a horrible way, but I'm just kind of.
I'm probably like, I'm all right with when something ends abruptly. So as soon as we end this and click the record button, I'm like, yep, done. Where moments before I'm like, I don't want to end. It's like, it's a really nice conversation, and so it's that. But as soon as it's a physical ending, it's like, yeah, done.
Yeah.
So then it'll be at my, and then move on to the next part of the day.
And we've spoke about doorknob confessions, haven't we? And it was Barbara, my supervisor. Have you heard of them?
It was at the end of the last time. I think you brought it up at the end of your last
doorknob confessions, so that when the session ends, it's mostly the client. It's generally me. When you're person holds the door, they go, and I just tell you,
Yeah.
Harry's been showing me his private parts over the garden fence, and I'm like, oh, I should have started with that Carol. And I haven't got a Carol or a Barry, this is just made up. But I was talking to Barbara and I was like, oh, doorknob confessions, I do those. She went, it's supposed to be the client who does that, not you. So I'm working on mine, because as it ends, and this space, as soon as that door opens and the threshold of the door, my metaphysical stuff comes up, and I start saying stupid jokes, things that are not even funny, not major. So I'm working much more on that, because I hemorrhage out, and it's not always the client. So I think that's really useful to look at, isn't it, from a therapist's perspective, from a friendship, from meeting someone in a coffee shop to when that ending comes and they're clinging and they want to get away. I just tell you this.
Yeah.
You know, we can both be, you can both be wanting the same thing at the same time. But that's there for me, where I'm sort of like, yeah, we're done now. I want to put all the room back and tidy up, and because it's the space I occupy. But if it was in your space, I think I'd be in a much more respectful ending. And so I think we can be harsh as well with our endings. I can be quite like, right, we're done next. I've got 15 minutes. That is my major boundary from the session ending to what I've got next.
We're done. So on that note, it's been a pleasure, Will.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And we shall see our guests next time.
Brilliant. Oh, thanks, Will.
No problem. Thank you.